Welcome back, my friends. Today on the channel, we're going to do the monthly question and answer video. Once a month on the Posts tab, my YouTube channel, I'll put out a question prompt such as this one. Down below, you can ask me anything about anything. Read each other's questions, and then thumbs up the ones you want me to respond to. The cutoff for today's video is 60 thumbs up. Thank you so much to everyone who left a question or read each other's questions. We got some good ones today. So the top ranked question is from Awesome HPT. This is what this person asks. What do you think about what is happening right now in the Caucasus? Do you think that they are finally realizing that it's time to leave Russia's sphere of influence? Here's a map showing the ethnic breakdown of the Caucasus, and it's complicated. So Georgia and Armenia, these are predominantly Christian nations, and then Turkey, Iran, and Azerbaijan are majority Muslim. So in the North Caucasus, this is inside of Russia's borders. It's both Muslim and Christian. And these people don't really like each other. They've been fighting for thousands of years. Kadyrov's blood feud is a new escalation in his power play. I think this was in response to a dispute over the Wildberries Corporation. Kadyrov's clan was fighting over ownership of, I think, what is equivalent to Russia's Amazon Corporation. How Dagestan called Kadyrov's bluff after his blood feud threat against a billionaire lawmaker. These are all Russian subjects. These are people living inside Russia, threatening to kill each other over ancient feuds. So the Chechens get the most attention because they make the most noise, but there's really not that many of them. 1.5 million people. There's more people living in the Las Vegas metropolitan area than in Chechnya. So for the Muslim population inside the Caucasus, inside of Russia, they don't want to be part of Russia. They never did. And it's obvious to see why, given that Putin markets the Russian state as a defender of traditional Christianity, Eastern Orthodox values. Patriarch Kirill is a former KGB agent, but he has final say over the religion of the country, in that Islam is tolerated, but it's never going to be elevated. When Putin is dead and long gone, Russia is never going to have a president that is Muslim. So I think for the Muslim minority in the Caucasus, they're always going to want their own independence because they're going to want self-determination. They're going to want to make laws based on their beliefs, their religious practices, and customs. They're never going to have this in common with the ethnic Eastern Orthodox Russian population. So why don't the Caucasus openly rebel? And it's because Putin pays them off. Chechnya's dependence on federal funding hits new high. The only reason why the Caucasus don't rise up and declare their independence is because Putin pays them off. So Chechnya's budget, 92% of the revenue comes from the Kremlin. Of the money that the Kadyrov clan spends in Chechnya, only 8% comes from local taxes. The other 92% comes from the Kremlin, meaning it's oil and gas revenue, meaning it's the Russian taxpayers of Moscow and St. Petersburg subsidizing this region. So as soon as the spigot is turned off and they're not getting any more money, they want nothing to do with the Kremlin. They want nothing to do with the Eastern Orthodox Church or the Russians. And yeah, they might get violence. We'll see. In general, this is a complicated area, and Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia aren't very large countries. If we had 2 or 3 more countries that popped up in this region, it's no different than the Baltics. It's no different than Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Perhaps these countries, if they can get past their differences, can form some kind of economic cooperative to coordinate stuff, but it might be a while before this region finally achieves lasting peace. Next question. Why was Kadyrov allowed to enter Turkey, a NATO country? And the answer to this question is because NATO is not a government. It's a military alliance. So governments place sanctions on corporations and people. The United States, the G7, the EU, and NATO is not a government. So Kadyrov, his entire family has been sanctioned. U.S. targets mother of Chechen strongman, Ramzan Kadyrov. So Kadyrov's mother has been sanctioned. Kadyrov begs U.S. to lift sanctions on his horses. This was a funny moment. This was like a year and a half ago, but the United States and the European Union sanctioned Kadyrov's horses so they can no longer go to the European Union and compete in events. This really upset Kadyrov. He loves his horses. So why did Turkey allow a Chechen billionaire who has been sanctioned by numerous countries and organizations? And it's because Turkey, as a government, has not sanctioned Kadyrov. Why not? And it's because Turkey wants good relations with Russia. Turkey is not a member of the European Union. And this is a contentious point. I'm not European, so I'm not going to talk too much about this, but for decades, Turkey has wanted to join the European Union, and at this point, I don't think it's ever going to happen. And it has to do with population. Going back to 1960, Turkey's population was 30 million and Germany was about 73. But over the last 50 years, Turkey now has a larger population than Germany. They have a higher birth rate, meaning that if Turkey were to join the Union, they now would have the largest national voting bloc in the Union. For that reason, this makes other countries nervous, and I don't think they're ever going to allow Turkey to join the EU. And unless Turkey wants to sanction Kadyrov, there's nothing stopping Kadyrov from vacationing in Ankara and bringing his whole family. It's stupid. I agree. Next question is from Animal Rescues. Trump has reduced the deadline for Russia to 10 to 12 days, which means next week. If Trump actually implements the secondary tariffs next week, what kind of immediate reactions do you expect from Russia, China, and in general? Trump is being Trump. He could just make a decision, but he doesn't like doing that, so he likes to mess with people. Trump announces 25% tariff on India plus penalty for trading with the Russians. Why specifically a 25% tariff on India? Yes, they're buying Russian oil, but so are other countries. And I think Trump is doing this as leverage to negotiate. I don't think Trump is putting 25% tariffs on India to get them to stop buying Russian oil. He wants some kind of concession. He wants India to agree to something else, and then he'll lift these tariffs. Like, I'm reading this headline, and I truly believe Trump is now using Ukraine as an excuse to put tariffs on other countries, to engage in negotiations, to get them to concede on other things. Like, India could say, we're going to stop buying Russian oil, and I don't think Trump would be satisfied. Like, he's using this as a distraction for other economic goals he personally has. This is stupid. We need Congress to sanction Russia. Lindsey Graham and Brian Fitzpatrick, their co-sponsored bill, like 85 senators support it. This isn't going to be voted on in the next month because Congress went into recess. Because of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, and there's enough House Republicans that want to vote to release the list, subpoena and get the documents, and then just hand them over to the public. Speaker Johnson freaked out, and he sent Congress into recess early. So Congress is not coming back before Labor Day. That's like September 3rd or something. So we need Congress to actually vote to do sanctions for them to be stronger or more meaningful. But as always, it's up to the Trump administration and the Treasury Department to enforce them. I will say Secretary Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, I do think he wants to have stricter sanctions and wants to enforce sanctions on the Russians. So if we can get Donald Trump to just allow the Treasury Secretary to do what he wants to do, this could be devastating for the Russians. This is the fight we're having this summer. We're working on it. Concerning your second parts, what will be the response from Russia? And Russia doesn't care anymore. I think Putin is over it. I don't think Putin... This is beneath Putin, to go to Trump's level, to engage in these political games. This jostling and positioning over made-up stuff and lying about everything. It gives me a headache just thinking about how Trump thinks and operates, guys, but this is Dmitry Medvedev. Trump issued a theatrical ultimatum to the Kremlin. The world shuddered, expecting the consequences. Belligerent Europe was disappointed. Russia didn't care. Russia doesn't care. They don't care what Donald Trump says or thinks or does anymore. If Trump actually wants to put tariffs or sanctions on other countries, Russia's just going to go it alone. They're going to retool their economy so they are impervious to U.S. sanctions or U.S. tariffs. I think that's the direction that Putin and his inner circle are going in. They need to be self-reliant. They need to double down on their trade relations with other BRICS nations. And they have to avoid the U.S. dollar and create a new bipolar world. Like, Trump is just accelerating the timeline for them. But this is what they've been planning all along. Next question is from Donut Master. Hi, Jake. Why do you think the Russian army hasn't massively protested against the war when it has been a disaster for over 3 years now? The answer is money. Technically, the Russian military fighting in Ukraine is still an all-volunteer force. Not really, though. I mean, 300,000 men were mobilized and they didn't want to go to the war zone. But the majority, the overwhelming majority of Russians in the military said they wanted to be there. They signed a contract. Were they tricked? Were they coerced? Were they let out of prison? Yes, all of those things. But still, for the Russian population and even, I think, the mindset of the average Russian soldier, is it still a voluntary force? Russian regions hike military sign-up payments in bid to boost manpower. This is from last year. These sign-up bonuses were life-changing for these Russian men who have always lived in poverty. These are not the ruling elite of Moscow and St. Petersburg. These are impoverished people from smaller towns across Siberia. They were paid very well. They knew that when they went to the war zone. So anything that happens to them when they get to Ukraine, it's about a sense of personal responsibility in that they signed the paperwork. It's not ideal conditions, but that's why there's not been any large-scale uprising or revolt. That usually happens during a time of war with conscripts, people who were forced to be there against their will. Russia's going to continue these wars, and they're eventually going to get there. Russia's going to start mobilizing men against their will. They're going to start drafting and conscripting men against their will. They're going to send them to Ukraine, and those are the people in a time of war who rise up against their commanders and then refuse to fight or defect to the other side. Russia's new mobilization law, yet another sign Kremlin is preparing for war with NATO. There are indications that Putin wants to do another round of mass mobilization. These are men who have military experience, but they've had 3.5 years opportunity to sign a contract and they don't want to sign one. So as soon as the Kremlin starts forcing those men into the war zone, those are going to be the agitators. Those are going to be the ones saying, we don't want to do this. We didn't sign up for this. It could happen next year. Next question. This war has been going for 41 months. Raytheon can build 1 Patriot system per month. Where did the last 41 systems go? This got 105 thumbs up, so I think there's some confusion here. But no, Raytheon cannot make an entire Patriot battery system every single month. They make 1 a year. I asked Google how fast can a new Patriot system be built. It takes about 12 months to build all the components, the launchers, the radar. And I, for fun, asked Grok, and Grok agreed it takes about 1 year to build an entire Patriot battery system. So in the last 3.5 years of this war, Raytheon has built 3 new systems. And I think Ukraine has more than 3, so they're beating the production rate. Here's Wikipedia showing which countries around the world have Patriot systems. The reason why Patriot systems are so important, this has been proven on the battlefield. The Patriot system is the only known air defense system that can shoot down a hypersonic Kinzhal missile. So as far as mobile air defense systems, there are stationary air defense systems that are better, but as far as what can you put on a truck and move around, the Patriot system made by Raytheon is the best. Every nation in the world wants it for protection from hypersonic, ballistic, and cruise missiles that Russia is developing to threaten the world. This is why Western countries don't want to give up their Patriot systems. We're working on it. Next question. There are many reports about the near impossible economic situation in Russia. How long can Russia endure this? Probably a little bit longer. War-weary Russian banks are reportedly eyeing state bailouts as bad loans pile up. The default rates of private consumers as well as commercial businesses is skyrocketing in Russia. We're seeing it add up. So these banks in Russia are going to need a bailout. They're going to need the Kremlin or the central bank to buy and unload all this toxic debt that is being defaulted on. How bad is it going to be? And we get to watch this. We get to find this out over the next 6 months. I think these Russian banks are going to officially go public with how bad the debt situation is and how much assistance they need either from the Kremlin or from the central bank. And we're going to know the numbers, probably by September. In addition to every other industry needing a bailout. The coal industry, the steel industry, the shipping industry, the railroads, the airline. Everything in Russia is bad. Russian banks will fail. The question is how hard. We don't know. We don't know how bad it is or how bad it will get. I just know this year and next year, nothing is going to get better for Russia. This is a really long question from Peter. I am going to read it. Could you give us an update on the status of the defense industry base of both Europe and Ukraine? How are they doing, and what and how many weapons are they cranking out? What are the future prospects for a future ramp-up? I am also interested in how this pertains to Ukraine's constantly evolving long-range strike capabilities. Rightfully so, but it is important to acknowledge that a lot of cases drones are a weapon of substitution, or even in some cases, especially in the early stages of the war, desperation in lieu of shortages elsewhere. Peter, thank you so much for your question, but to properly answer this would take an hour. Defense Economics, there's a YouTube channel for this. This is friend of the channel, Perun. If you want to get the in-depth analysis about production capabilities, budget shortfalls, all that stuff relating to militaries and their economies, Perun is the best. He's the best on YouTube. So I'll link his channel down below, and if you want to see what Europe is doing or what Ukraine is doing, I'm sure there's a relevant video from the last 6 months tackling this complex issue. But in general, we're putting all of our money on drones. That is the solution here. More tanks, more fighter jets, more air defense systems. That's not how Ukraine is going to win this war. Ukraine's drone output soars 900%, producing 200,000 drones in a single month. 900% is year over year. It's all on drones. Ukraine plans a drone deal with the United States valued at $30 billion. So what lots of countries are doing, like Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, is they're just giving Ukraine money to develop their own defense industrial base. Ukraine is building the factories to create these hundreds of thousands of drones every single month. And this is an investment. We're giving the money up front, and Ukraine, when the war is over, is going to pay us back with drones. These factories, when the war is over, are just going to keep cranking out as many drones as possible, and then these purchase orders years in the future will be fulfilled, and the drones will be delivered to Denmark or the United States or whoever wants them. This is a new business model, and in a time of war, this is incredible, but this is what we're doing. We're going to find out together if this is going to work or not. Would you ever run for office? You can always move back home and try to run against Ron Johnson. Thanks for all your hard work on these videos, Jake. So for those who don't know, I am originally from the state of Wisconsin, but I currently live in the state of Nevada. I left Wisconsin to go teach English in South Korea. I then returned to Wisconsin to join the Air Force. In the Air Force, they sent me to California for 2 years and then North Dakota for 4 years. When I got out of the Air Force, I just wanted to have some fun, guys, so I moved to Vegas. So if I were to move back to Wisconsin and run for office, this would not be weird. I'm an University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire graduate, and I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Ron Johnson is the current senator that I would be up against if I wanted to run for Senate in 2028. So Ron Johnson might be done in 2028, and Republican businessman Scott Mayer might be the Republican frontrunner. Scott Mayer is a Daytona race car driver. Okay, this is what he looks like. It could be a different Republican, or it could be this guy. I might run for Senate in Wisconsin in 2028. We'll see. I'd have to move back to Wisconsin. My other option is to run for Congress, the House of Representatives. And I could run in either the 1st District or the 3rd District. The 1st District is East Vegas and Henderson. The 3rd District is West Las Vegas. And these 2 districts are represented by Democrats. So Congressional District 3 is represented by Democrat Susie Lee, and then District 1 is represented by Democrat Dina Titus. If you've never heard of Susie Lee or Dina Titus, that is the reason why I would choose to primary them and take their seat from them. These are generally considered safe Democratic districts. If I want to get into the House, I've got to primary an incumbent Democrat and remove them. This is not easy to do, but I think I could do it. I think by the time I run, I'll have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I'm rapidly expanding my presence on the other social media platforms as well. My followership is up on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter. I don't really use TikTok, but I could start using it more aggressively in the future. And I think I can beat these people. They're so boring and they're so ineffective. If somebody like me put in the time and effort, yes, I think if I were to choose to run, I would win. Once I'm in Congress, though, what would I do? Do I really want to be there? Yes, I think I would have a national profile and I would get a lot of attention, and then the eye of MAGA would be on me. And they would scrutinize my military history, they would scrutinize my family backgrounds, they would scrutinize everything about me to try and discredit and destroy me. This is why good people don't run for office. Because if you have a national platform, all of a sudden 70 million people hate you, and they want to see you destroyed and ruined. This is why you've never heard of Susie Lee or Dina Titus. These women don't want MAGA looking into their backgrounds or attacking their family members or trashing them. So negative politics works in that it gets people to shut up. But at this moment in our democracy, we need people to speak up. We need people to make a stand. And if it's got to be me, guys, it's got to be me. I'll do it. Next question is from It Wasn't Me. Hey, Jake. Thank you for your great content. I know you live in Las Vegas, and I'm wondering if you can see the decrease in international tourism in your city. There are videos online that show the strip empty, allegedly on a Saturday night. I find that hard to believe. It's bad. Donald Trump has destroyed America's reputation. Everyone around the world now hates us, and this is hurting international tourism. I don't remember what the numbers are. I think international tourism for Vegas is like 20%. It's like 1 in 5. A lot of people from Canada and a lot of people from Mexico enjoy vacationing in Vegas, and they don't want to do that now because Donald Trump is a terrible person who is making the lives for people in Canada and Mexico unnecessarily difficult at the moment. So with casino business slowing down, Nevada now has the highest unemployment rate in the nation. It's getting bad. So valets are being laid off, cleaners or whatever. When the casinos slow down, they contract their staffs. This is somebody I follow on Twitter, Alex Cole, and this is from today. He's in Vegas, and he's posting pictures saying, "Where is everybody?" So this is facing New York, and the Park MGM. I think this is Aria. This is Excalibur. This is the intersection between the MGM Grand and then Excalibur and New York, and there's no people out. This is inside the Park MGM. This is one. I think this is my favorite casino hotel to hang out in on the south side of the Strip. I really like the Wynn on the north, but on the south, I like the Park MGM. And yeah, it's dead. I mean, he's, I think, walking around during the daytime. Maybe it'll be busier in the evening, but these are the informal reports, and it's consistent. For people posting pictures and videos of what Vegas is like, what the casino floors are like, it's getting bad. It's probably going to get worse. And this is very suspicious. I'm going to give you guys a clue here. Donald Trump is not talking about the stock market. So the US stock market right now is at an all-time high. And Donald Trump is not bragging. He's not taking credit for it. And if he's not talking about it, it's because he thinks it's going to go down in the near term. He doesn't want to say this is the Trump economy, because if the stock market declines 20% over the next 6 months, he'll be blamed for it. Whereas when he announced all these tariffs and the market went down 17%, he said it was Joe Biden's fault for some reason. It's stupid, guys. He's such a child. I think the economy is going to get a little weird. And I think Donald Trump believes the economy is going to get a little weird over the next 2 years as we adjust to these tariffs that Trump wants to keep in place forever, I guess. Next question is from Moki Kokoris. First, I want you to know that your work is indispensable, so please continue, Jake. My question: if you could have an hour with President Zelensky in a private conversation, what would you want to talk about? That's a very good question, Moki. Thank you. So when it comes to President Zelensky, I've been seeing all of his pictures and videos on social media for the last 3.5 years. I don't always share everything about Zelensky in all my videos because I'm limited on time and there's other things to talk about. I did share the story of President Zelensky visiting the School of Superheroes at a hospital in Kyiv. And President Zelensky has no fear meeting with, talking to, and interacting with ordinary people. For wealthy people, for ruling elite, they don't so much like the commoners. Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump don't spend a lot of time talking to and interacting with ordinary people. In addition, Zelensky almost every week will visit a hospital and honor or spend time with wounded defenders. So these are Ukrainian soldiers recovering in the hospital. And he sent these people into battle. He's the leader of a nation at war. And he has no hesitation, no problem meeting with wounded heroes who have given limbs, who have lost their eyesight, their hearing, who have seen the carnage of war. And he embraces this. This is something that Vladimir Putin or even Donald Trump, they don't feel comfortable doing this. I just think he's a very genuine person, and I think he believes everything he says about wanting to fight corruption and have Ukraine be an independent and sovereign nation in a prosperous future, being part of NATO, being part of the EU. This is President Zelensky visiting the drone interceptor factory. So your question is, what would I want to talk to him? What would I want to talk about with him in private if I could have an hour? And I think I would just ask him how he's doing and get his reflections on the last 6 or 7 years. President Zelensky was a wealthy, successful, and popular actor, performer, dancer. I think he also has a law degree. So he got into politics not to enrich himself, but to make real and lasting change in the country. So I would just get his thoughts and opinions about human nature, potentially the future of his country. Maybe ask him, do you have any regrets? Like, what mistakes did you make along the way, and potentially how have you learned from them? How has the last 4 or 5 years changed you as a person? Do you still have that optimism that got you into politics in the first place? And he's definitely seen the horrors of war. He knows all the secrets of the country. I can't imagine the burden emotionally he shares with his family and his inner circle. I honestly would just want to listen to him, whatever he has to say, in the moment, however he feels. I would just take that in, and I think that would be an interesting experience in a private conversation. With the nonstop talk of Russia attacking NATO in 3 to 10 years, depending on who is asked, and Russia will attack Moldova, Finland, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Sweden, as a firm favorite for supposed defense experts, what's your assessment? You don't need to listen to me, you can just listen to the Russians. Every day on Kremlin state TV, they threaten the Baltics. They view Moldova as a fake country. They say Ukraine is a fake country. So at the bare minimum, Putin would not settle for anything less than all of Ukraine, Moldova, and the Baltics. It's debatable. Finland, Poland, the Caucasus, other parts of Central and Eastern Europe. But what's happening with Putin is the same thing that happened to Hitler, because Germany was divided. This is the Polish corridor. This is prior to Germany invading Poland in World War II. This is Danzig. And after World War I, the Poles were given access to the Baltic Sea. You need access to the ocean to get your exports in and out. So Germany was split in two. There's East Prussia and then the German mainland. And this drove Hitler nuts, the fact that all of his territory didn't touch each other. And it's ironic that 80 years later, it's the exact same situation. So Russia has Kaliningrad, and Kaliningrad does not touch mainland Russia. If you want to say Belarus has already given up its sovereignty and de facto Russia controls this territory, still doesn't touch Kaliningrad. So everyone talks about the Suwalki Gap to have Russia and Belarus touch Kaliningrad, but they don't actually need to invade Poland. They could just take Lithuania. I think if Russia were to attack the Baltics, they would go into Lithuania first, cut off Latvia and Estonia, and worry about them later. But it's about connecting Belarus and Kaliningrad. It's the same thing that Hitler was thinking about 85 years ago. It's stupid, guys. But Russia cannot attack the Baltics until they win in Ukraine. And this has been Russia's military doctrine for centuries. Conquer a people, enslave the people, conscript them into the military, and send them against the next ethnic group to die in that war. So if Russia won in Ukraine, and I'm not saying they're going to, but if they did, they would force mobilize the Ukrainian male population into the Russian military and send them to die against the Poles. And let's say they won that war somehow. They would force mobilize and conscript the men of Poland into the Russian military and send them to die against the Germans. That's Russia's plan. It's not any more complicated than that. It's not a good plan. And this is the map. I think this is the map that Putin stares at in his office, saying, this is how it should have been. The maximum extent of the Russian Empire was in 1914, prior to World War I. And the Russian Empire controlled Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Poland, Finland, Warsaw. This didn't make sense 100 years ago, and this doesn't make sense today. But this is what Putin is saying. He said this last month. Wherever a Russian soldier footsteps, it becomes ours. And this is retroactive. Anywhere that a Russian soldier has ever been in history, that territory today rightfully belongs to the Kremlin. That is their doctrine. There's no conspiracy here. This is what their head of state openly says. Next question. What is your take on the stray Russian drones in Lithuanian airspace? Do you think NATO should react in any way? This happened this week. An unidentified drone enters Lithuania from Belarus amid rising tensions. Lithuania mulls partial airspace closure amid search for drones suspected of being launched from Belarus. Where did this drone go? And it either probably flew over the Baltic Sea or it crash landed in Kaliningrad. But this is just the Russians messing with NATO, testing NATO. They believe that causing provocations benefits them. There's mass confusion, and your action, what should be NATO's response? And it'd be nice if we could stop the Russians from visiting the EU. While Russia kills 232 Ukrainian civilians in a single month, its citizens sip wine on the French Riviera, with EU visas in hand. I still don't get it. I don't understand why Russians are so easily able to just travel to the EU or attend international events and sporting competitions. They're killing people. They're bombing hospitals. They're bombing retirement homes. In the city of Kherson, it's human safari. You can see the drone video for yourself. The Russians are using FPV drones to indiscriminately kill women, children, elderly people, anyone that moves. These are not military targets. The Russians are savages. They're barbarians. They're the most evil people on the planet today. They are ISIS with nukes, and nobody should be associated with them. Nobody should be doing business with them. But because they have money, and Western companies, Western governments like money, they still let these people into our countries, into our societies, into our economic cooperatives, sporting events. I would have thought 3.5 years ago that we would have put a stop to this, but we didn't. I mean, it's all about money, guys. If the Russians didn't have money, they'd be isolated, but as long as they're willing to pay, we're going to keep taking their money. Not a great way to end the Q&A, but I really appreciate you guys. I enjoy doing these once a month just for a more casual and a different kind of format. If you click on these videos and you watch the Q&As all the way through the end, you're a super fan. You're one of the great ones. I really appreciate you guys. That's all for this Q&A. Till the next video, take care, everyone.